Hey everyone, Dirty Diode here, and today I want to run through what I do for my startup procedure, I'd say about 95% of the time. It's definitely not the full proper way to start up the airplane. There's so many things you can do with this airplane, and it can definitely be a little overwhelming for someone that's starting up. So I want to just show what I do, what works for me, and if you're new to DCS and the A-10, maybe you'll learn something from this. And same thing if you're a seasoned player and you're watching this, thank you, and yeah, maybe you might glean something from it as well. So. Uh, Basically, I'm sitting here on Guam, and airplane is pretty much dry, empty, nothing going on with it, just sitting off. So this is what we call a cold start on the ramp. And I'm going to go ahead, hop in here. A couple things to start with is I've got track IR on, so that's how I can move my head around like this. If you are new to DCS, if you've never seen this before, it is definitely something I recommend getting. You basically can put it on your hat or on your headset. There's a couple different ways of doing it. And it allows you to track your motion and look around the cockpit like you would in real life. It's pretty nifty. There's also some phone apps out there that can do it. So no matter how you accomplish it, definitely something that makes it like the immersion go to the next level. So pretty cool stuff. Um, Secondly, I turned on precision mode, which is a little annoying for me, but it's easier, I think, for people watching this to be able to actually see what I'm pointing at without getting like all dizzy and whatnot. And lastly, I do have a full HOTAS setup and panels as well. I am going to purposely not use them as much as possible for this tutorial because I want you to see what I'm clicking on in the cockpit. So a lot of people don't have HOTAS setups, which is perfectly fine. Do what you can do to play the game and what's fun for you, and that's what matters. But I am going to try to do this without that today, just so you can see what works. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and start up the batteries. Now, as we do this, I'm going to call out a couple gotchas that I think can get people hung up as they're doing the manual startup. And it's really not that difficult once you start going and you take care of the few gotchas that you really need to make sure you do properly, while everything else you can pretty much just do at your own pace. So I'll call those out and we'll go through it, and hopefully this will be a good experience for everyone. So with the battery on, I'm going to come over here and on the APU start switch, let's go ahead and right click that. And if you don't know, right clicks generally move switches up, and left clicks generally move switches down. If it only goes up and down, then left or right doesn't matter. It'll just switch it on its own. While we're starting up here, the APU, it's going to come up to 100. You can actually switch on prior. It's not proper, but again, this is just an abbreviated startup to get you going if you're trying to get up in the air flying quick, or you just don't care because again, going back to what makes you happy, if you don't care about doing a full startup procedure, then, don't burden yourself with trying to do it. So APU's on. I'm going to switch the inverter standby to up. Now, one of the first things, I'm going to go ahead and actually close the cockpit here so you can hear me better. But one of the first things you want to do once you get power is you're going to start up your CDU. Now, this is one of those gotchas. If you don't have this guy powered up, you're not going to start aligning. And aligning takes about 4 minutes unless you are super fancy and you do the quicker in-flight alignment method. But just, if you're starting up and you're new to this, just turn that guy on and let it start counting up. So now that we are waiting for that, the other thing you want to do, if you're starting a quick mission, you might already have a loadout. I do not currently. So if you don't have a loadout, go ahead and click the backspace button, backslash button, excuse me, below the backspace button, and that's going to open up your communication menu. And go ahead and click F8 or ground crew, and then F1 or rearm and refuel, and that's going to pull open this menu. Now, if you're new to DCS or new to the A-10, they're going to have some default things in here. You can also set up your own. I'm going to start with a light profile here, just to have something. But Really, you want to keep an eye on your weight, make sure you're below your maximum. You can get away with being above it, but then bad things start ensuing, like having your wheels pop. Your gear can get damaged, kind of annoying. So, stay below it if you can. You can adjust your feel here to get below it if you are above it with your weapons. Keep in mind that if you do start the game or the server with a full fuel loadout, it will take time for them to unload that fuel. So this is going to work for us for today. I'm going to go ahead and click OK.
Request rearming.
It's important to do that before you start really loading. Now, not starting up, but actually loading your MFD screens, because there is a point where you basically tell them, okay, I have weapons on here, and load those into the computer. If you do that after, they're not going to match, and it's going to be angry with you. So those are the two things, the rearm and getting this EGI or CDU started first thing, and then everything else can go a little bit slower here. So with my HOTAS, I can nudge these the throttles, the left and right throttle forward to start the engine. You can also do it with the keyboard with the right Alt Home for the left and right Control Home for the right. Those will start your engines, and then end with the right and Alt and Control will stop the engines, but we're not going to need those today. So you can only do one at a time. So with your APU running, I'm going to go ahead and push the left one forward, but again, you could do right Alt Home to do this. You can see engine start cycle is lit. You can only do one at a time, so now that we have one engine going, we're going to let it do its thing. And this is really where I really start just going around starting to turn things on in the cockpit. I go ahead, I flip these guys up. You can, on the IFFCC, if you want to have a little bit of fun, you can go up to test and hit enter to have it start doing its bit check. That's the built-in test. It's kind of fun if you've never done it. Do you need to do it every time? No. I'm going to go ahead and hit enter to start it just so you guys can see how it goes if you've never done it. But it's going to start doing some testing. You'll hear the voice come on saying pull up, and stuff like that. So don't be alarmed. Also, because I'm taking so long and we're starting up, you typically will get a APU gen alarm. You can reset it here by clicking the master caution reset, or just leave it. Doesn't really matter. But we have now started up the left engine because that light is gone. You can also look over and look at that, it's spinning. So at this point, I'm going to start my right engine, and there you go. You can hear the voice with that built-in test. So right engine is starting to spool up. Now, again, I'm taking a long time talking here, but I'm just going to start clicking things now that don't really matter as far as in the game if you're starting up. If these matter to you and you want to do a full startup, more power to you. I like doing that sometimes, but for the purposes of this tutorial, we're just going to start clicking stuff, and I'm going to talk as I do it. So with power up, you can click these SAS buttons. These allow your airplane to kind of auto trim and stabilize while you're flying, kind of take some of the burden off of the operator. It also is required for autopilot, so those are important to have on. Built-in test is done. I'm going to right click this guy to make him go up. Now we've got this up here. Again, you could totally have just turned that on to begin with. Doesn't matter. Let's right click these guys on. I am loaded now, so at that point you're going to click load all. I'm going to, honestly, if you're just wanting to play and get up in there and whatnot, you can turn your master arm on, your laser arm, your gun pack arm if you want. I don't fly around with it typically on, but you can. It won't hurt anything. It'll just make your stick move a little bit differently. If you're not don't know what I'm talking about, just go ahead and go off and on while you're flying, and you can see the stick move. Not bad. You can just trim it out. TGP you can also switch on. Not standard, but you can. Over here you've got radios. You don't need to turn these on if you're just doing a single player thing and you're trying to shoot things, but it's good to turn them on if you want to actually hear other things. These ones that are identical, you want to do the right switch to TR for transmit receive. This middle one here, you want to go to main. If you have easy communications on, really it's going to do all that for you. and so like if you want to talk to the air traffic control, it will automatically um, change the frequency to that once you hit like request startup, for example. Don't need to do that if you're just doing the quick startup. So with that said, some more things here. IFF, you can turn on if you want, not need it if you're just wanting to get up and fly. Landing lights, don't really need it, but anti-skid, that is an important one to turn on, so you can go ahead and click it. Flaps, you do want to come down to the 10% if you're going to be taken off, so go ahead and do that now. Let's see what's next here. Fuel, it's good to have that on main so you can see what you have in your whole airplane, but that's not needed. Our DTS is uploaded here, so I'm going to go ahead and switch to TAD, and let's do TGP. That's still starting up because I just turned that on. Again, if you're taking off for real or you want to do full sim mode, you would wait to turn that on, actually all that until you're in the air and fencing into your target. You can see that we have started up the right engine, it's spinning, there's no alarms, so I'm going to go ahead and start turning off the APU. So if you don't want to get an alarm, go ahead and flip this switch off first. Don't do the inverter switch, that'll take away power from things that need it, but this one here. And then you're going to come over and shut down your APU. Just like that, super simple. Okay, so I've been talking so much, you can actually see that the CDU is done. I'm going to go ahead and click on the repeater here so you can see it a little bit better. This, when you click the CDU, is going to mirror everything from down here. Super easy if you're actually really get into it. It's nice not having to look down and up, and trying to do things. Another important thing, and I'll show you after I do this, but go ahead and click Nav, EGI, and EAC. So that is something that trips up a lot of people if you've never done it. And what basically happened here is when we turned on the CDU, it takes about 4 minutes. This is decimal minutes, so like 3.9 is 3 minutes and 9/10 of a minute. Once you get to 4 and it's aligned, you have to click Nav, and that basically tells the computer to use that as a source of information. You then click the EGI, which says, okay, I trust that information. And by the way, I'm probably butchering this, so please let me know in my comments. But this is how I understand it. And then once you have that selected, then you can say, okay, flight control computer like autopilot and things like that. You can trust what we have loaded here. The backup is the was it HARS, and that's really not enough information for your autopilot to do its thing. So you have to be in that EGI, and then you can flip up this EAC switch. If you are not in EGI and you are in HARS, I already got an alarm because EAC said, oh, I don't like that, I'm flipping off here. So if you have a problem where you're doing your startup and you click that and it's just not staying on and you're getting frustrated, it's probably because you don't have EGI on. And if EGI is not staying on, it's probably because you don't have nav selected. And if nav isn't getting selected, it's probably because you haven't aligned properly. So, like I said, that is one of the biggest things that will trip people up. Do it correctly, it's sitting there happy. So now I am going to flip up all of these guys. This is your countermeasure system, and I go to semi. That allows me to use my HOTAS, this button on my HOTAS, to drop individual flares or individual chaff. I tend to like that better than using the programs. Some people like doing the programs. If you go to auto, that will actually, it'll do it for you, which, in theory is great, but if you're up there and you get a lot of things kind of locking on that might not be actual threats because they're so far away, it just starts dumping things and you can run out of things quick. So typically people don't fly around with it in auto. Let's see what else. There's the oxygen test button, totally optional. You can click it and the dial starts going down to 0. Once you get below 0, low oxygen light comes on. It comes back around on its own to 5, and everything's happy. You used to have to flip the supply on, but I think with the A-10C II, they start you with that automatically on. So cool beans for that. There's also a test button here for your fuel. So if you click and hold that, it should read 5,900. Let go, it goes back to what it is. Totally optional. The totally optional buttons here, signal lights. Normally bad sounds you don't want to hear, but when you click that button, you're making sure that they're all on and working, and all these alarms, let go of the button, they go away. Same thing with this one. This will check your bleed air and your fire system, so those lights are coming on. Again, totally optional. Another thing that is not optional, it's important, is your pitot heat. In this airplane, you can leave it on all the time. But if you don't have it on and you get up where it's cold, you can actually freeze up your pitot tube, which is a sensor in the front. Well, actually, I think on here, it's this stabby thing right here sticking out of your wing. And that measures your airspeed. So if that gets frozen up, you don't know your airspeed and bad things happen. Another thing, going back to oxygen, if you don't have your oxygen on, which again isn't that much of a problem now that it automatically starts on, but you can get too high and you start kind of getting delirious, and it almost looks like you're drunk as you're looking around. And if you experience that and you're up high, it's probably because the oxygen supply somehow got turned off. So flip that on and you should be good. Let's see what other things are important that I like to look at here. Um, oh, let's talk about the helmet-mounted queuing system, that your HMCS. It's this guy here. I forgot to turn it on. So I'm going to go ahead and right-click it so it goes to on. You can notice that there's this like faint rectangle, and that's basically because I'm looking down at the airplane. If I'm looking down or through the HUD, by default, it's not showing anything. You look away, and there it is. Now, this is something, we're kind of getting to the advanced stuff, but you can go to Stat and HMCS, and this is where it's actually kind of pretty powerful here. So you've got a list, and you've got a marker on the list, and you've got a down and an up, and a select button, if you will. And so you can go up and down here and basically change the settings on here. And so if you notice, if I click that to on, all of a sudden I've got the crosshair no matter where I'm looking. Pretty cool stuff. Now I'll probably go through this on another video, but generally for me, when I'm starting up, I'll go through and I'll actually turn these guys on. It's a lot easier if I use my on desk real world MFDs, because then I can just come over here and just blaze through it. But not needed for the tutorial really here. You can fly with the default. It's nothing wrong with that. It's just as you start doing more advanced things with the A-10C, it's actually nice to not lose some of the things, especially if you're like looking at where your wingmen are, or if you're looking at a target that might be down here and you're turning and you kind of want to know where it's at. It's nice having those extra symbologies on here. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back off since we don't need it here, but it's just there so you're aware of it. Lastly, put your injection seat down. I mean, we're in here. You know, it's not real life. It would be really bad if this was real life and you accidentally ejected up into that, but it's a game. Go ahead, turn it on whenever you're comfortable so you don't forget it. And finally, let's see here. I think that's about it. There are lights. You can turn lights on. If you have a pinky switch mapped on your HOTAS, you actually can kind of play with these. By default, it's in a mode where it won't allow you to do the anti-collision. So right now it's saying, hey, you're in like night mode. If I click up with the pinky switch, now it comes on. You can see the light there. If you look down here, you know, it's still on, but I can now click this guy up. So if you're having trouble with your lights, take a look at the pinky switch mapping for your throttle. And looking. You know, for general startup, there's not much else I typically would do. I mean, I'm sure I'm forgetting something. I'm sure someone will call me out in the comments, but again, I just want to run through what I typically do for startup if I'm trying to get up in the air and we're not really, doing a full, military sim startup. Nothing wrong with that. Again, I do it sometimes, but um, sometimes you just want to get up and flying. So, with that said, one thing I did forget is the nose wheel steering. It is the pinky switch on your joystick mapping. So no matter how you have it mapped, if you look right here, you click it, that comes on, and that allows you to actually steer the wheel when you move your rudders. So if you don't have that, and you're on the ground and you're trying to turn and you're not turning, make sure your steering's engaged. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to taxi out. Going to spool up a little bit. We're going to go and take off here. Now, generally you want to follow the yellow lines. If you've ever seen the movie WALL-E and the robots are on the ship, they're all following the yellow lines. That's kind of what airplanes do on the ground. But, if you got to deviate from a line, go ahead. You do what you got to do. It's a game. If you're in a group and you're all trying to be super, military sim, then you might want to not do that because you'll piss everyone off. But, if you're just going up, having fun, or you're new to this, don't stress about it. Just, drive your airplane around, and you basically want to make your way to the end of a runway, which is what we're doing. If you go too fast, it's kind of hard to know how fast you're going. Right now, this is your airspeed, and it's stuck at 50 because we're not actually going above 50. I don't believe there's any other way to really know how fast you're going when you're on the ground here. So you kind of just have to get a feel for it. But if you get going too fast and you start turning, you can start sliding or roll the airplane, and that's not good. So go at a pace that you feel comfortable going, that you could make a turn if you have to, and that's generally a good speed. So here we are moseying along. You can always hit F10 by default. That's your map. See where you're at. We're going to come up over here and come around and take off from here. Hit F1 again to go back to the cockpit. And also, if you don't know, F2, you can move the mouse around. That'll give you an external view of your airplane. So coming down here, we're getting close to the end. In real world, we'd be on the line. We would have called out that we're taxiing. You'll see some red markers as we get down to the end here. Those basically in real life would be places that you'd have to call out that you're crossing to the tower and get permission before you do. We're not going to do that today because, again, the goal of this is just to show a startup procedure and taking off. So we're still moving. Sometimes you can be on the opposite end of the runway from where you want to be, and it can take a long time. Just kind of what happens when you're flying an airplane. But here we are. We're getting towards the end. I can do a slight left here. This is a good speed to do a turn at. You're not going to start sliding out or anything. You can brake easily if you need to. I have brake bound to an axis on my joystick, so I could do a nice smooth braking. You don't have to have that. I have definitely used the keyboard to brake for years without issue. You just got to kind of like tap it and kind of baby it. But if you've got a brake lever on your stick, or you have some other analog means of doing it, cool. More power to you. So here we are. I stopped. Don't have to stop. Gonna give it a little throttle to get it going. Pull the throttle back. If you're on a server or in a map that has other airplanes, you want to make sure that nothing's going to be landing on you or coming your way when you're taking off. Some people like to do a rolling takeoff where they just go. I like to stop, make sure everything's good before I take off. You can hold the brake and spool up your engines. That is handy if you're very heavy and have a shorter runway, because the engines do take a little bit of time to get to full speed. Or you can just, if you got a good long runway like here at Anderson Air Force Base, you could just, give it gas and go. Once you get up to about 80 knots here, you want to turn off your nose wheel steering, and your rudders will be able to steer for you at that point. If you are landing, which I will show later here in this video, you want to turn that back on once you get down to a certain speed. If you do it too soon, you can kind of can go out of control on the runway. Once you get back, about to 160 or so, you can start giving it back stick to pull up a little bit. Once you're in the air, go ahead and pull up your gear. You also want to move your flaps to off. They will do it automatically. The A-10, you can leave your flaps on full flaps the whole time. It's not necessarily good, but you're not going to damage anything. They will retract on their own when you go above a certain speed. So here we are flying. I'm going to go ahead and do a nice left turn. We're just going to come back around and land back on the airport. So I tend to fly a little fast and use the speed brakes a little more aggressively than other people would. I used to be a glider pilot in real life back in the day, and we had no way to speed up really once you're doing the landing. You kind of have the energy that you have, and if you are a little short to the airport, there's not much you can do. So you tend with gliders to have a little bit more kinetic energy as you're coming into the airport, and then use your spoilers or your speed brakes to slow down. So there are other ways of slowing down, but those are the primary ones. So you know, again, people might call me out for this. It's a game. I'm having fun. You know, for flying in formation with the team, I'd be doing this differently. But just having fun, taking off, coming around, I'm gonna kind of do what feels comfortable for me. So, you know, it's good to look at the airport, kind of see where you're at when you're coming in. If you start your base leg too soon, which is where I fly perpendicular back towards the runway, it really kind of makes you run out of room to line up and do what you need to do to have a good landing. So if you're new or you're not sure, just extend your downwind leg, which is the direction we're going now relative to the airport. Just extend that down further until you're comfortable enough to make it shorter. Nothing wrong with that. You know, the aim of the game is to have fun, be happy, and you know, learn something along the way if you can. So we're about there. I will show the speed brakes. I do have that mapped to my HOTAS, so if I pull them open, you can see this opening up. That's going to slow me down. That's spoiling the air coming over the wings, and that will basically make your glide ratio a lot worse, and your airplane will start dropping a bit. So right now, though, they're in. I'm going to come around. I'm going to start slowing down here. Again, I prefer to have a little bit more speed coming in because I'm used to not having engines. But you know, in real life, you'd want to be a little bit slower coming in. There are published speeds at different positions on the circuit here that you want to be at. You can look those up if you want. I am just, again, doing what feels right. So coming around, I was on base leg, coming around the final. Now, this little thing right here looks like a little airplane from behind or in front. That's your, whatchamacallit, it's the total velocity vector, I think is what it's called. And that's basically where your airplane is going. Now, right now I'm high. I'm going to start pulling open my speed brakes here. I'm also going to do what's called a side slip. I'm going to rotate my rudder to the side, one side, while I use the roll to the other side. And what's happening is I'm flying pretty much towards the airfield right now, but I'm sideways. It's a very inefficient way for an airplane to fly, and thus it slows you down quick. But it allows you to also drop quick. So I've got my speed down. I am horribly off axes from the runway here. Let's get back. But you know, it's again a way to slow down. So generally, you want to be down to about 150, 160 or so if you're kind of new to this, just to get some speed and have some more room to play as you come in. But you want to get that velocity vector.
Pull up.
And your gear. That's embarrassing. You want to get your gear open or down.
Pull up.
So I'm going to go ahead and do a go around here. So, you know, my bad. I've been talking so much. I'm going to get the spoilers back in, get the gear up, and we're going to just overfly the runway again and come back around. So totally embarrassing, but you know, I was focused on talking with you all and having fun here. So mistakes were made. We're going to learn from them and come around. So at this point, we're treating it just like we're taking off again. That's what you kind of do in real life if you're doing a touch and go. So I'm going to come up. I am going to try not to get as high this time. So I'll try to show a little bit more proper way of doing a landing. So I'm going to come around. We're going to keep our speed below 200. You don't want to get too low that you start stalling out. But if you're around, you know, 180 to 200, it's a good speed to go as you're moseying around the airport on the circuit here. We're doing left-hand turns. I'm going to come around the downwind. My velocity vector there is dropping a little bit. I do have a bad habit of letting that drop when I do turns. It's something I'm working on. But we're going to try to keep that as close to the center line as possible to keep us at about the same altitude. Going to go around. At this point, I am a little unsure. I think at this point it's proper to put your gear down. I tend to do it a little bit later because it does add drag. But I'm going to drop it down. If you're going too fast for the gear to drop, it just won't drop. It will stay up until you get below a certain speed, which I think is around 200, 205, somewhere like that. But with that down, I'm also going to pull back on my flaps and put them in maneuvering mode, which is going to go to 10 degrees on the flap indicator. And depending on conditions, you can actually go to full flaps, which I'll do now just for the heck of it. So you can see down there on the bottom left below my gear indicator that they are down as far as they will go. So you don't want to gain too much height here. I'm also getting a little slow. I am by no means a pro at this, or pretend to be. So we're going to give it a little bit more gas here. Speed brakes are still in, which is good. If you have them out and you are giving it full gas, I believe it will let you know that you're doing that. But we're at a good speed here. I'm going to come around, do a nice base leg turn. And look at that bad habit of dropping it again. So I'm going to pull up a bit as I'm coming around, giving it a little bit of gas so I don't bleed off too much energy or speed as I'm doing it. And I'm going to come back around. Super ugly, but we're having fun. Okay, so right now, you know, I could just go to the right runway. I'm going to go back to the left here. But ideally you want to be lined up as you turn out of your base leg turn. I'm starting to get a little bit fast here, so I'm going to pull back. I don't feel like I need to use the speed brakes right now, which is fine. I'm going to get my total velocity vector. I'm going to put that right on the runway here. The A-10, you don't have to flare as much as other airplanes, which means pull up at the last second as you land. But I will pull up a little bit just to show people what's going on. So as you come down, velocity vector's there. I am pretty much killing the speed, or the throttle now, because I have enough airspeed. And I'm going to start flaring. I'm also going to open up my speed brakes. Now when you do this, you don't want to be too high, because you will just slam down like that. And put my spoilers back in. That is definitely a very expensive noise we're hearing right now, so I did do something wrong there. Again, I'm not used to flying low and flat as I'm doing a landing, so it's something I am working on. I am starting to apply brakes. I've also turned on the steering for nose wheel steering. And from the sound of it, it sounds like I have burst my tires. So let's take a look. I'm going to pull off the runway here. We're going to take a look and see what I broke. Okay, now that we're clear of the active runway, hold the brake until we're stopped. Throttle's all the way back, and let's go look at what happened. Now, I just hit F2, and it won't take me outside because this menu is still up. So you want to kill that, you can hit exit or hit the backslash button again to kill it. But once that's down, then you can hit F2 to open. Let's take a look. And sure enough, I popped the front landing gear. So something for me to work on, but you know, you learn, you get better, and you have fun. So I am going to end it here. There is a proper shutdown procedure. You can, if you need to, if you need to have repairs like this, like let's say we're in a server and I need to repair my airplane so I can get back up. It won't let you repair while, hey, ground crew here. It won't let you repair while your engines are running. They're going to say no. So if you just shut off your engines, like, okay, yeah, that works, but then you gotta like really realign everything. So one other little trick you can do is ground crew ground electric power and ask them to turn it on.
Copy.
So they do that once they confirm that the power is on.
Power is now on.
Now you can kill your engines. Generally, you want to do them one at a time. If you don't want to do it or don't have the means, just turn them off. And then once things stop all the way and cool down, you'll notice that power is still on here because we have the ground power, but the engines are off. If you didn't do the ground power, everything would be off and you'd be stuck mostly with realigning everything. So I'm going to go ground crew, request repair.
Copy.
And there it goes. So it's going to start doing it. It takes about 180 seconds. Not going to wait for it. We're going to end it here. So I hope that this was beneficial for someone watching and learning. This is just an overview. Again, I'm not perfect, but I play this game a lot. I've been playing it for years, and I really, really enjoy it. So do what feels right for you. For me, doing an actual startup instead of the auto startup is really rewarding. But I feel like if I tested everything all the time, it does get a little tedious. So this is what I do. Works for me. Do what works for you. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. And, you know, at the end of the day, it is a game, and you want to have fun playing it. So if you're not having fun, you're doing something wrong. So that's it. Dirty Diode signing off. Have a good day, everyone.